Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2, really sort of episode 1, because episode 1 we just sort of told you about how we're going to do the damn thing, right? In episode 2, I think I said I was going to talk about variable names. We're actually going to take a step back real quick, because it occurred to me that quite a few people probably don't know that there's tools out there to help you write cleaner and better JavaScript. So we're going to talk about what those are. I'll link to some videos where you can get these tools set up. Some will be my videos, some will be other videos. But the main point here is that there's tools to help you write the latest and the greatest JavaScript. And we're going to give you an example, showcasing, hey, let's take this file from a beginner in JavaScript, no judgments, right? And let's apply a tool to it and see what it's saying is different from the standards that the industry expects. I want to thank our sponsor for this video, Dev Mountain. You can check them out at devmountain.com. Dev Mountain is a coding bootcamp with multiple locations. The thing that makes them unique is their affordable costs as well as their housing that comes along with it. So you can get up and go and start that journey to a new career and get a little help along the way. I've had the pleasure of visiting a Dev Mountain campus and it was absolutely beautiful. And I encourage you to check it out if you're ever in one of their 4 or 5 cities. As some of you may have guessed, the tool I am talking about are Linters or linting. And for those of you who are non-JavaScript developers, this may seem like an obvious thing, but a lot of beginning JavaScript developers don't go out of their way to set up linters because they just don't know it's a thing. So that's where we're going to start. So what is linting to those of us who are new to the concept? Well, linting really is 2 things, and these are always, whenever you're incorporating a tool, you have to answer what I call the big 2, the what and the why. So what is a linter? It is a tool that you set up, essentially one time usually per project, that will flag errors, programming errors, bugs, stylistic errors, and suspicious constructs. What does that mean? It's basically going to catch syntax errors. That's it. It's going to find out if you're making simple mistakes in your code where, hey, you're declaring this here outside of its scope, and that's going to break. JavaScript is one of those languages where sometimes we don't find if that happens until we work our way through the application. So linters give us the opportunity to find those errors earlier and more often. It also adds to readability. What that means is we're going to make sure that our code is formatted in such a way that is the industry standard or is a standard for that language, that programming items, and that's the why. So it's going to catch errors, syntax errors, sometimes more than syntax errors. It's going to have trouble catching logic errors, but that's usually more so a developer issue, and we'll talk about how to catch those later on. This thing is something that can also be automated, so you don't have to run it every time. It's just there, and we'll start picking up good habits by just sort of being trained by the linter to a degree. And this will lead to more readable code, less buggy code, and we'll be writing in better standards because of it. So let's go ahead and jump into an example. Alright, so what we have here is a TypeScript file, which is just JavaScript. It's a superset of JavaScript. And what we're going to be looking at is, immediately, because he didn't intend this file to be TypeScript, we have some errors. So I'm not too worried about that right now. We should have some worries, but you'll see here, this is before we turn the linter on, by the way. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to go ahead and turn the linter on and see, hey, let's take this file from someone just getting started and see how we could just clean up our code to follow the standards. And don't worry about the setup of linters. I will include, as I mentioned, 2 videos, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the linter back on and reload the app. And what we're going to see here is quite a bit of difference. Oh, there it goes. Just a little bit of a hiccup. So you can see that now there's something wrong with pretty much everything in this file. And this is so where linters excel at is catching those small errors that are semantic in nature, or that are, we want to, anything that we can compare. They're not logic-based errors. There are structure errors. They are formatting errors, items like that. And so what you'll see here is that the standard for comments, for instance, is to have a space between them. And so that's something we can fix. You'll see here that in modern JavaScript, you know, the var keyword is essentially forbidden, as what the word they use, and it'll say, okay, this is something that we have decided that, you know, use let or const. And so for the time being, we'll go ahead and change all the vars here, and there's quite a bit, right? There's quite a bit to let. So we'll change that to let. Go ahead and replace all of those vars. So we may have to change some of them to const. You'll also see that when we hover over this, the TS-lint is saying, hey, on average, you should be using double quotes to single quotes. That's kind of a silly one, but you can change that depending on your preference. But I think the more important point here is that you see double quotes here, single quotes here, is we want to have a set standard of what it is we're doing. You shouldn't have multiple ways of how you do things like this in your code. So let's go ahead and replace all the single quotes with double quotes. But you can see how we're slowly going to make this file just look a little bit cleaner. This isn't something necessarily that Linter would do, but from a personal standpoint, I would say that you know, you want your code spaced out evenly as well when we're getting started here. Your code needs to look like you cared. That's really what code readability means as we're going through here. So we'll go ahead and put a space here. Put a space here, and there's going to be other things that we're going to want to do to this file as we progress, but we just wanted to make it a little bit more readable, and we can do this in just a few more steps. Anytime you have commented code in here as well, you can go ahead and remove that. There's no reason to have that. Go ahead and space that out. You'll see we have this block scope variable CSS. This is just saying, hey, it implicitly has an any on here. Cannot redeclare block scope variable. Cannot redeclare block scope variable. Huh. We'll come back to this one. I'm not quite sure what that means, but we're clearly doing something that, hey, this isn't a good convention, and we should probably change something about this. But don't worry about the type on there. I didn't want to make this about TypeScript. You'll see here spacing out your items properly, right? You want this to be, you know, if this is all smushed and then this is smushed and smushed and smushed, it's harder to read. And what we want is our code to be readable. And that's part of why these spacing issues are so important. So we can go ahead and fix some of that. Oops, fix some of this, fix some of that, fix some of that. And so what ends up happening as we're doing this, and these may seem like minor things as we're getting started, but this is the minor things that we can start doing today by adding linting to our application, right? So all these items, and it shows that you care, it shows that you are trying to continue to learn and progress. So in JavaScript, if this is a JavaScript unique item, but in terms of, I want these videos to be more so, linting in general is something that really is only for JavaScript, not because you're using text editors, while full-fledged IDEs like Eclipse or PHP Storm or something like that, WebStorm, it already has all this built in. So this may be a newer concept for JavaScript developers, but for the average developer, it's not. But in terms of JavaScript here, so you should always be using triple equals unless you have a very good reason to not be, right? Is there ever going to be a string that is a Boolean called border box or a number called border box? No, there's not. And so we should use a triple equals to be more stricter in our convention. More spacing out here, make this more readable, right? This is more of a TypeScript thing, is that this border box code is essentially have what we call a magic property or a magic string. We don't actually know that this style property or display exists on it, and we'll talk about that in a later video, how we might change that. Empty white space, no good. I would say on average you want, they don't like the empty trailing white space? Really? There we go. It's just I would say on average you want to have a space between your logic and then function calls. That's more of a personal preference, but to me I think it's more readable. Trailing white space, it's never good. I want to space things out, right? Space things out. Elements never reassigned here. So here's a great example of, hey, we don't actually reassign any values. In JavaScript, a lot of people have the misconception that const stands for constants, which it kind of does, but not really, not in the traditional sense. So const means that, hey, we're not going to reassign the value, but when dealing with objects, which we are here, or arrays, we can modify the value easily. So let's go ahead and space that out. We want to clean this up. we have all this empty white space. We don't want that. There's no reason for that. So you can see here, type 1 is not assignable to string. It's not assignable to type string. So we're having right here, this is having a whole issue, but we'll worry about that later. So set timeout, space this out, arrow functions, only arrow functions. So here we're saying, hey, the standard convention now is, unless you have a very good reason, and the whole reason I say you have a very good reason you should be writing arrow functions is because truly that's the point, is you can override tslint. So here we'll see two different things and say, hey, why don't we just go ahead and remove this and put it in like so. This is because we have some issues here, but now we're cleaning this up slowly but surely. And I typically, when I'm doing function calls, would have this on different line, but that's just me. It doesn't really matter. I also would probably remove the trailing white space because it drives me nuts. But here we go, spreading it out, putting a little bit of spaces in here, just listening to our tslint, right? So here we have a whole bunch of lets that should be const because we never actually reset the value of this, and we of course want to space this out, space this out, space this out, space this out. And so the good thing about this is as you get shadowed name with no shadowed variable, I don't know what that means. So we'd probably have to look that up to say, hey, what does that mean? So here we have that CSS error, but that's a TypeScript error. We're not worried about that. We're trying to focus on the styling and the function of our code. We want to delete these white spaces, delete these white spaces. Very nice. Put some spacing here. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. Space this out. We want to do triple equals. Typically, unless we have a good reason not to. I want to space this out, right? This is all about readability. When it's scrunched together, it's hard to read. The same thing here. Same thing here. But anyhow, so right now we're going through the file. We're doing these minor changes. A lot of this will be syntax stuff. Some of it's important, right? We're using a let instead of a const. And there's hundreds of rules when it comes to this. And so what you'll end up picking up are these good conventions. These conventions that say, hey, what makes good clean code? Because that's really what a linter is there for what it can do in that aspect. And you'll pick these up just through habit, pure habit. Very nice. Space there. Just go ahead and do that. So you'll see here, this isn't doing anything right here. When it's, you can see this is more of a, but this answers.sort. This is quite literally doing nothing. So you see when we hover over here, we're having when the A and B are grayed out. That's a new feature they added to actually VS Code, and we can see that, hey, we're never using A and B, and we're never sorting this. So this is just something in his aspect. He misunderstood how answers.sort works. Sort returns an array of values sorted based off A and B. So this is just something that we'll comment out for the time being, and but that's doing absolutely nothing. What else do we have here? So answer buttons, this should be a const, right? Because it's an array that we'll be modifying. I want to space this out. Go ahead and put space here. Space this out. And we can go ahead and clean this up a little bit because we're using arrow functions. Let's go ahead and get rid of those brackets. Excellent. All right, almost done here. I'm not sure what's going on here either. Did he mean to do result display dot add event listener? So that's a syntax mistake as well. And so we have our query selector. We're gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit. They're using arrow functions here as well. I'll go ahead and clean this up. I'm not going to worry about the TypeScript issues there. Clean this up, put this on the same line, space it out, very nice, and check results. Almost done here. This should be a const, so variable declarations should typically be on different lines than your logic here. Statements are not aligned. So you want things aligned nicely, right? So you see how like TSLint, we haven't really talked about that because we haven't come across it, but something's not aligned properly, we should definitely have it aligned because again, it's about code readability. So else if, space this out, space this out, space this out. Let that go there. We have this set timeout. Just go ahead and throw a function in here like so. Almost there. And bam. We have our else. Remove this. No need to have that there. We'll talk about comments and in a later section. But bam. So what we've done is now we have made our code just using the linter, and there's still some errors in here, and we'll talk about those in a later section, but we have been able to make our code much more readable, much more understandable, and to the latest standards in terms of just basic TSLint things and linters to get going. So linters are here to stop those syntax mistakes. Linters are here to get you to code in a certain manner, in a cleaner manner, in a more readable manner, and they are the first step to writing cleaner, more maintainable code. This will be the more of the hard code. Like, this is the only tool. The rest of the stuff we're going to be talking about, this is stuff that you have to learn, that you have to implement. And one thing about linters, and in our case we're just using TSLint, but one thing is that you have the ability to override rules because they're not absolutes, right? We don't live in a world of absolutes, but these always help to get you going. These always help to get you started, especially when you're just getting started to writing cleaner code, and especially in a JavaScript environment where this is kind of a newer idea when you're getting going and no one maybe has told you about it, which has kind of occurred to me like this is where we should start. So I hope you found this helpful. As always, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, and if you're interested, and I hope you are, if you're serious about writing better code, I will have 2 links in the description for how you can set up TSLint, and then also how you can set up ESLint, which is JavaScript's version as well, linking to those because there is a little bit of setup, but once you have it set up, it's pretty easy to initialize. And you can see here, I didn't really talk about it, but this is it. We're just using the recommended settings. We don't have any of our own custom rules here. These are the recommended settings that TypeScript, Microsoft, who maintains it, and the open source community that helps recommends that you use when you're writing TypeScript. And so this is the standards of the language, right? And the same thing will happen for ESLint as well. But don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share. Look forward to the next video where we will be doing the variable names I was talking about, and talk about what's good names, what's bad names, how can we know that we're succeeding with writing clean, maintainable code, and so that you can code like a pro. See you next time. All right, so Gabriel Andy Phono says, I'm 27 years old. I want to be a software developer. Is it possible? If yes, give some tips. First off, say please, motherfucker. Secondly, yes, it is possible. I got my first dev job at 28. I really didn't start going 100% until I was probably 26. And it's gonna take hard work, just like every other dev. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is keep working some shitty job, right? That you hate. You're probably trying to be a software developer because you want a better life, right? You want more money. You want a more successful career path. All the things that come along with it. But it's hard work. You're gonna have to, put on, a lot. The only issue I have with people who ask this, especially, most people would say 25, 27, 30. Anything under 30, most people laugh when you ask that question because it's like you're just getting started. The average person doesn't retire till 60, 65. You got another 30 years to work. So it's almost laughable, and you're just sort of looking for some. If me saying no to you right now is all that it would take to get you off the path, then you were never going to make it, right? So yes, it's possible, but you have to put a lot of hard work in, a lot of time, a lot of energy. Becoming a self-taught software dev is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a let's put in the time and effort and slowly grind our way there. So if you're willing to do that, it's completely possible. Tips are, I have 800 videos on here talking about it, but you're going to need to code every day. You're going to need to have a nice LinkedIn, GitHub, and a personal portfolio. Start there and continue to learn after that. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you like this series and you want to learn more on your own, might I recommend the book Clean Code. I have an affiliate link in the description as well as in the card that you can click and check it out. I highly recommend it. I'll be doing a book review about it shortly. Check it out. Bye guys, and see you next time.